All right, guys, welcome back to the Strike Twice podcast. I'm with Trey and Ray again for episode number 7. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Can't complain. A little crazy to think about. We're on number 7. It's I don't remember any of the other ones. I think even I have about half of last week's. Other than that, I'm lost.
Yeah, just imagine when we're on episode 375. We won't remember any of them for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
we've already done more this year than we did our whole podcast career. So we're cruising now finally. So
we're
Yeah.
getting the hang of it. We're starting to get the hang of it a little bit. So
yeah, so I mean, we got a really great show, but the first thing from running news is the Olympic trials for the marathon was yesterday. Did you guys check that out at all?
I
I saw it, but I did not see anything more than that. I don't know who won or anything.
Well, the big news is on the girls' side, I think, because this is kind of hits home a little bit, but there were some huge performances. So Fiona O'Keefe, get used to hearing that name because she just imprinted herself in U.S. history, and as well as we're going to be seeing her at the next few Olympic Games, I'm sure. But she's 25 years old. She was a walk-on at Northern State University, D2, South Dakota. So we competed against this girl a couple years ago. I'm sure. We saw her at some meets, but walked on a Division II program, ran for Stanford. It was her marathon debut. She not only won, but set the record and punched her ticket to Paris. She ran a 2:22, which is just smoking.
Damn.
She obliterated the course record. And it was such a deep field on the women's side. You had Sarah Hall, Emily Sisson, and Lindsay Flanagan. Like, such a deep field. Never ran a marathon before in a race. Her debut. So, I mean, huge, huge performance from her. What do you guys think about all that?
It's just God-given talent, what it sounds like.
that is yeah, that's brutal. 2:22. I think that was my goal for my half marathon this year. So I think no, that is wild. I think we're starting to see stuff like that a little bit more and more in the world of athletics too, because like it's starting to come about in running more just because the more popular it gets and the more backing there is, like the more people are going to dedicate some more time to it. And so you're starting to see more of those walk-on stories, and that's also like a crowd favorite. Everybody loves that.
Mm.
Everybody loves that story. So I mean, you think about like in terms of if somebody wasn't like a big runner or didn't know like the running field at all, you think about in terms of like the NFL, like Austin Eckler, the running back for the Chargers. That's just a super freak. He was a walk on at like a D2 program here in Colorado, I think too. And so like, yeah, same thing. You just kind of like, I think it's I think it's being shown more and more like uh people are hitting their peak later. Um so I'm really curious to see. I was actually just thinking about this the other day of it's really common in other countries to maybe like take a gap year before you go to college. I'm wondering if we're going to start to see like some athletes, like really promising athletes, instead of doing the fast track where like you get guys like LeBron that just goes straight to the league or whatever, where people might in a sport like running take a year, take a gap year, go do some running and just kind of hang out and travel around and then start their collegiate career and just have that extra year. That could have played into her success too, where she's kind of come from, she came on late, but had such a good structure at the collegiate level where she got to keep that training, regime and just keep rolling with that, but then kind of hit her peak as well at the right time, which I think she's probably far from her peak given that. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting to think about it. It kind of opens up the field to a lot more questions than it does answers. That's for sure, I think so.
Well, and yeah, to your point of she's got such a big career ahead of her. You look at some of the field, men and women. There were women that were in their upper 30s. There were a couple of them on the men's side that were 40, and they were in the top five. So I mean, you look at Galen Rupp. Even that was he was trying to get to his fourth Olympic Games over 20 years, which So if she's hitting these marks at 25, that's pretty exciting, and so I'm excited for the future to see her run. And again, from Northern State, we competed against Northern State all the time in college. So huge shout out to her. That was pretty dang amazing, I thought.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's crazy.
And then on the men's side, Connor Mance and Clayton Young, they're teammates, they're training partners. They went 1-2, just cruised to a victory. They sat behind somebody the whole race pretty much, and then the last 8 miles took it over and went 1-2. But they raced each other every single day of practice. Like that's kind of a unique thing. You don't see that a lot, but teammates went 1-2, and they're from Utah, so they obviously get some good elevation there and stuff. So pretty good performances on the men's side as well. Any thoughts on that?
Just teammates going 1-2. That's also just a really cool story of its own. I can imagine being there in that position would be pretty great.
Yeah, you could see them talking to each other the whole race. They were giving each other hand signals, and I mean, running those wicked times. I think they ran 2:09, and they were so comfortable that they were having conversations, running like 4:40s ish for 26 miles, and then at the end they still were able to just hold a conversation with each other at the end. Like that to me blows my mind that you can
Yeah.
run that fast and still be able to just have a casual conversation.
Yeah, did you say they're did you say they're in Utah? Do they run for college right now, or are they fresh out and training professionally?
I think they're training professionally now.
Yeah, there's definitely
I think they ran for BYU though a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's yeah, definitely um I feel like the running in general, but especially in that upper in those upper distances, it's just I feel like you can't even keep up with it anymore. Every year it seems like there's somebody new that's just a super freak. Like, and it's more and more, it's just regular, like run of the mill, like didn't have a crazy career up to that point, or, had like a very good career, but just as good as, probably 10 to 15 other collegiate athletes that they competed against. And for some people, it just seems like it clicks at a point, and then that upper distance, like marathon and up, once you get into ultras and stuff, but marathon and up, it just seems like every year it's just becoming like somebody else is in the hot seat, just ready to roll. And it's like, holy cow, dude! Like, so yeah, it's kind of run and gun right now in the distance world. So
Yeah, I think one of the other things that Leonard Career, he was third place, and so how the trials work for the marathon, the top two were guaranteed a spot on Team USA, and then from there, that third spot can qualify by hitting a certain time, and so on the women's side, they all hit the top three hit their mark, so all three of them are going to Paris, whereas the third place guy on the men's side, Leonard Career, he didn't quite hit that time, so he has to now wait potentially several months to hear if his time is good enough. I mean, can you imagine having to wait months to see if you made the Olympics and having no control over the situation at all?
Yeah, that just sounds like a mental challenge of its own. For like having to train for a marathon physically is difficult, but then to have to wait for months. Is it so what's the cutoff time that like how far above was he? Do you remember?
I think he was pretty close because he was also in the 209 range. He was 209 high. Clayton and Connor were both in the low 209. So I don't think he was that far off. Might have been like high 208s. I can't remember for sure, but he wasn't that far off. But I mean, I'm sure he's kind of wondering, oh, is there some place that I could have improved? Should I have gone sooner? I'm sure there's a million things running through his head right now.
right, I mean, then that's when you have that much time on your hands, that's when you start to like try and probably dissect that whole race, where you're like, where could I have, and that's kind of the funny part because it's something you'll never know and you have no control over really, like realistically during the race, like you're running your race, but until you know that information, once it's over, there's no going back. So it's just it's got to be such a weird spot to be in. And, uh, like to Ray's point, also, like, what does that do for your training? What is you know what I mean? I feel like you just proceed assuming that you're going to go at that point. But such a crazy mindset to be working through that because that's going to be, really challenging, obviously, but having to keep that motivation and that mentality of like, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going all the way through your training. But every night you're sitting in your bed going like, am I going? Yeah, that's got to be crazy. I don't envy that position of waiting and wondering, I will say. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's that's the thing is it's out of his control now, and I mean he's just got to wait. But yeah, I think you made a good point on training. He's just got to train like he's gonna make it, and then I mean because at that point you got to sell out, and at this point he's got to prepare for the Olympics, and um, but other noteworthy things from the day is Galen Rupp finished at the towards the end of the pack. I think he might have been last for the men. Which he was kind of a dark horse pick. I mean, he's getting kind of towards the twilight of his career, but I mean, you talk about a guy like Galen Rupp, and you can't not root for him. With everything that he's done, set so many records, and been Olympian twice or three times, and medaled twice, I think. So, I mean, what a career he's had. And just a little shout out, I got his autograph right there. I went to the Prefontaine Classic and I was just wandering around the streets right outside the meet, and my cousin's like, "Hey, go get that guy's autograph." And I didn't recognize him right off because he was in just street clothes, and he was like, "Get his autograph." I was like, "I don't know who the hell that guy is," and so I got it, and I like looked at it. I was like, "Was that Galen Rupp?" He was like, "Yeah, it was." So he wasn't even competing at the meet. He just happened to be hanging out in Eugene. So I always kind of had a soft spot for him. But that's a cool thing about going to those meets is you run into some big athletes just walking around. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's an all time. He's a top three for me all time in terms of like distance runners, just runners in general. Runners in general. He's in my top three for sure, and always has been. He's just I just felt like he brought like just a grit and like just the dog in him, like for from the beginning of his career. He always had it. Like it just felt like he ran like his life depended on it for his whole career. But I loved getting to watch him, like you said. Like I mean, that span of his career, when you look at just purely like the dominant professional days, it's like that's enough. You can make a highlight reel into a movie at that point of what he's accomplished. It's just kind of one of those things where yeah, whenever he's in the field, you're like, well, I gotta put out a little, I gotta put out a little bit of hope out there for sure. So, um, but yeah, I think he's definitely accomplished more than most in their running career. So I don't know what else he has left to give, but always good to see. I mean, like for him to even be there and running at the trials and be like, well, he's in the conversation because you can never count him out. It's like that's a testament right there to like where he's at in his career and how long he's been running. That's a testament to like who he is as a person and what he's done in his career. Because that most people at that point is just kind of like either they're not there at all or it's they're not really in the conversation. So um, yeah, always a good one to have on. But I still to this day am supremely jealous of that autograph. Always will be, I think. So
Yeah, that was a good time. I went to the Prefontaine Classic the last year before they tore the old Hayward Field down, and you went to the World Championships for the last year. So we'll probably have an episode just dedicated to Eugene and Hayward Field and all that, and kind of it's just a magical place. So I'm sure we'll do its own episode. But if you ever get a chance, go to Eugene, check out Hayward Field, go to a meet. It will change your perspective on professional running because it is definitely on another level.
yeah, their new track, their new facility is like any track nerd, any running nerd is gonna lose their mind. But if you're not a running person, you don't care about track, like you're gonna go, and by the end of the day, you're gonna be like, I think this is my favorite sport. It's unbelievable. Their new facility is like life alteringly good. It's crazy. So yeah, fully endorse that statement. Definitely get to Eugene and do your best to get there for a big meet because they got some crazy names that show up there for sure. So
Yeah, so let's just dive right into the meat of the episode. The title of the episode is "The Solo Runner versus the Social Runner." This was created by Ray. We were just having a talk after last week's podcast of what we were going to talk about, and we have three different backgrounds. Me and Trey competed together, so we have kind of that in common. And Ray's done so much of his running alone and by himself, and so that's the topic of the episode. So Ray, how would you describe yourself as a runner and talk about your running background as a solo runner? And that's what we're gonna call you anyways.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess that's how I would describe myself too anymore. Um, so yeah, I started in cross country in high school way back in the day. Wasn't really a huge fan of it, to be honest. I just did it because friends were doing it. Um, and it wasn't really until my mid 20s when I kind of found the love for running again. I just took a few years off. And I don't know really where that transitioned at, but I one morning woke up and I was like, I want to do a trail run today. Never did it before. Um, Found I absolutely loved it and kind of kept it like what is it? Not backcountry run at that point. It's more like the front country. Just like it was close enough to a town still, but yeah. Then I just kind of got addicted to it, and it became my life.
Yeah, I mean, for one, you got into the running world, you said, because your friends were doing it. So there's some of that social aspect as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's probably how all of us got into it. But then, yeah, the first thing that stuck out immediately was like trail running. Like to me, it that just embodies solo running because for one, you can't run next to somebody because
Yeah,
you're usually on a single track trail. So immediately, even if you're running with somebody, you're not right next to them. You're if you're in front, you're running alone unless you're chatting with your training partner or whatever. But the trail running world is so solo. I know there's a lot of community in that, but it's such a solo thing, and so I think that's probably where your love for trail running kind of turned you into a solo runner, I would think.
yeah. You're spot on. Like kind of like I like the sense of adventure. It's just a general approach in my life anymore. I think that's why trail running just was such a the meat to it was like it just hooked me immediately because I can just get out somewhere completely by myself. And I don't know why that's very addictive to me to go for a good hour, 2, 3, 4 hour run on a trail, but I feel like you can't really beat that. And that's a few years into it, that's kind of where I got now, where I'm at first, I was kind of nervous to be by myself for like that long time, especially out in in the middle of nowhere, really, around here. And then I just got more used to it, just kind of did it a few times each summer. And now it's like, I can't wait for every summer to just get on a trail by myself. It's almost like I look forward to doing a solo run more than actually having like a partner, even though I would like love having a partner here and there. Like Trey's done a few with me, but yeah.
So
I
that
think we did. What did we do? We did Goat Flats first, I think. So they were, we'll throw out a couple of names, and they won't mean much over the podcast, over the audio, but just to keep our story straight ourselves, to track it, we did Goat Flats, which I will say, if Ray could probably build a house at the trailhead of Goat Flats, he probably would. Because I don't know how many times I would text you and be like, "Hey man, you want to grab a beer? I just got off work," and you'd be like, oh yeah, I just came back in from Goat Flats. And I'm like, all right, well, like at least you earned your beer. Like you, but the the amount of times you've done that run is probably not we can't quantify it at this point. But we got out and did the Goat Flats, and I think we did 9 or 10. And then I don't remember what the other one. We ran to a lake, right? Did we do Page Lake or what was that one?
Yeah, it was Paige. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one was funny because it was it was Ray goes, yeah, I think it's like 10 miles. And then we hit the 5 mile point on the trail, and I'm like, "Ah, there's quite a bit of uphill left. I don't think this thing is 10 miles. And then I don't remember what did it end up being. It was like 14 or something.
It was more about 15.
Yeah. we got we got up to the lake, and you just looked at me and started laughing, and we just kept laughing. I was like, because your buddy Brandon was there too, and um, if Ray, I would consider Ray kind of like a minimalist runner based on what I bring with me, because I'm like, we can live out here for a couple of days, man. I packed that thing, so I got all the stuff. But Brandon, I would say, is like as minimalist as possible as you can possibly be,
Yeah.
without just running buck naked at that point. So, um,
Yeah.
but we got up to the lake, and I remember all three of us were just sitting, and I started unpacking all the food out of my bag. There was a lot, and I was like, let's do it, man. So we were eating and just hanging out and uh, having a great time, and it was just funny, like it was a great like social thing, which is like I'm definitely more of a social runner. It was, yeah, a social thing. And then at the end of it, I was thinking about it, and I was like, damn, we didn't say hardly 2 words to each other in 15 miles. Like we talked for about 30 seconds at the top. And so as social as it felt for me, it's such an accessible thing for a solo runner to be able to run solo with a group. It's kind of a weird way to put it, but um, yeah, we've been able to do a couple of runs together, and I've always noticed that you're you're most comfortable is once we get off the trailhead and away from the parking lot and away from all the cars and stuff. But
Yeah, that's my preference. I would prefer to be by myself all the time on a trail. So, the further out I go to where if there's no one at the trailhead, I'm pretty happy. Well, it's funny too that run we're talking about, Paige. I decided, if you remember, I was running in my running sandals. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take these out that day. And it rained like the day or two prior, and I just didn't think about that through my head because the running sandals absolutely suck when it's wet because my feet just like in the sandals. So I had to take them off a few times. So I remember there's a few times going down where you and Brandon were just kind of out of out of sight for a little bit because I was just struggling back there barefoot. But
oh, I was in such horrible shape. I was like, I got to get down this mountain as fast as possible. If I don't, they're just gonna leave me here. I was like, Ray will come walking past me barefoot, but he's gonna leave me here. I was I knew at that point I was like, I'm just gonna open up and let the hill take me because I had nothing left. My hamstrings were cooked, but yeah, that was a good one though. I remember that that was kind of a last minute. We just kind of jumped in and made it happen. But
yeah,
oh, I was gonna ask you. It popped into my head. I wrote it down a couple of days ago. If you would tell the story about your when you went out and were like you you were just kind of getting into solo running and getting out and just being out for as long as possible, and you this is one of your serial underpacking stories. If
the
you
one
remember.
where the one where I practically almost died. That one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I've had this dream for a few summers now. Um, I wanted to run part of the Pintler Ridge, like start out. I know that name doesn't sound familiar, but I, I was gonna go like 20 miles outside of town and then run back into Mount Hagen, which is just like west of Anaconda, and then like run down from there to town. And I just dreamt about it forever. I was like, I want to do this someday. I just think that'd be amazing. And finally, one summer, my one friend that is willing to do something like that, I was like, let's just try it. Let's give it a go. So we did. It was like we left at 7 a.m., just kind of climbed up. Our goal was like, let's just do two peaks, see how long that takes us, see where we're at. If we feel good, we're just doing the whole thing. Like at that point, we're committed and we're going for it. Like, okay, did the two peaks, felt wonderful. Like it was like, oh, this is turning out to be like the greatest idea ever. Get to the third peak and it like went downhill from there so bad. For one, like I had this was like my first run really like it was going to be at that time it was going to be like a 26, 28 mile run. And I I had like three pieces of beef jerky. I didn't have any water on me. And I think maybe I did bring like a emergency packet. I brought two of those. But it was just like let's go for it, whatever. So when we got to that third peak, which was just a tough one to get to, like I rolled my ankle up there, starting to like kind of feel sick, like, oh, this is, not turning out to be a great idea. We're at the top of like, 10,200 foot, like there to like 10,800 for most of this ridge. I'm struggling. Like I'm hitting a wall hard. And we're at this point, we're probably get to like 6 or 7 peaks in. Only one more peak left, and I can't do it. I said to Brandon, like, if we do this peak, we're going to be coming down completely like at midnight in the dark in town, which we weren't really necessarily planned for that, like no headlamps or anything. Or there happened to be a road like right on the backside of this hill where we were. I'm like, let's just take this road and see where it goes. And that ended up being like another 14 miles to where to the end of that. So then, and I'm jumping fences because it's all private land at that point, which that was me if someone saw me doing that. Throwing up multiple times at this point too, because I have nothing in me. There was like a few huckleberry packages, so I'm starting to like eat those like when at the last few miles. I'm like, it's all I have on me. Like it just went terrible. And the only I surprisingly had cell phone service at one point. And so who I call is my mom. And I'm like, hey mom, we're taking this road. I don't really know where it's going, but I need you to come pick us up. When we get there, we're not going to have any service. So I think I'll be there. And I just set a time. Like I had no idea at that point. Fortunately, I was like spot on. Like I got there and she pulled up like 10 minutes after that. And then it took me like an hour to get in town because like every 10 minutes I'm like, pull over. And then I had to get out. Like it was awful. Had to go get my truck still, like at the trailhead where we started beginning of the morning. It ended up being a very miserable time, but really fun. That's like I don't know. It just I learned so much from it, and I think that's why I love it now because it ended up being way longer than it meant to be. Like I think we ended up getting like 34 miles, and majority of that was climbing peaks. Like I really don't know our total gain. I never really, I didn't use Strava or anything at that time, which was unfortunate. But when I tried to estimate myself, I think we're around like 12,000 or 13,000 climb, which is a pretty good climb at that for not doing anything like it.
Yeah, that's pretty decent, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty similar to the entire gain on the Leadville 100. I think it's like 12,000 feet of gain. So you did that in 34 miles. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean like less than 34 because it was like probably like 20, 18 up, Yeah, it was that's kind of like what I don't know what it is about it. I love the sense of an adventure, even if it just is like gonna kill me. And that's that day I learned a lot from it. That's what I like to do.
Yeah, man. If somebody wasn't a distance runner before that story, they're definitely going to be converted. You made it sound like a blast. Somebody's
I know.
routine.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the last time at that time, it's when I used to run in just like basic, like, I don't know, I think I was running in Asics. That's the last time I ran in like normal tennis shoes because I kept rolling my ankle. That's when I transitioned over to the whole barefoot minimalist type world. But yeah.
So I know Hunter has a few questions written down and some stuff he was going to ask. I just had one more, and then we're kind of just going rapid fire at Ray today. He just gets to answer all the questions because I feel like Hunter and I talk about so much, like in our everyday conversations, like on the podcast, all the filler, we, there's always something we throw in about like our running past because it's just all we know what to talk about. And so I feel like there's been such a good perspective and kind of outside looking in of what we or how we perceive running and to just kind of perceive that world and as we've started to transition into a little bit different running world. But mine was I always got when we're running in college, people would always say, "Oh, I don't know how you could do that. I couldn't like I don't even know what I would think about for that long." And we would always laugh because we were like, "Oh, we talk to each other all the time." And then they'd say, "You talk to each other while you're running?" We're like, "Well, yeah, it's not like most days, but uh the days that you run alone, even it's like 5 or 6 miles, like people have this perception that you're out there all day and you're just trying to fill your head with all this stuff, and you kind of just go back and forth between like, "Ooh, is that a stitch coming on?" And you're like, "God, I got some homework I got to do," and like it's just kind of normal everyday stuff. So I always got that question, and it was just funny to me because it never seemed like it was that crazy of an answer. So from me to you, then, what the hell do you think about for 34 miles in 12 hours, or just in your general? I know you go out for 3 or 4 hours on the regular. Like, what do you get into out there?
Oh gosh, great question. I mean, honestly, a lot of it is just where I'm at. Like because I'm in the middle of a trail, like by myself, beautiful area. Like that's enough for me to just be able to focus because I am just taking in the view pretty much. I don't, and a lot of it too, there's I guess, the level of, I am pretty focused on like what's around me sound wise because I just, if I'm by myself, I want to know what I'm coming up on. But I don't know. I just kind of get in a little bit of a groove to where my mind shuts off, I think, after a certain amount of time. And it just kind of goes away. Because like there a lot of times I'm like before I know it, I'm like, oh wow, an hour and a half's gone by. Cool. And then and then I just keep going. That's kind of where I'm at. But yeah,
So to sum that up, you think about nothing.
I think so.
There you go.
It,
Hey, if you want, you heard it here. If you want to clear your head, just go run 34 miles, man. You will forget all about everything, all your problems, bills. Don't worry about them. None of it.
yeah.
34 miles, you're good.
Yeah.
To build off to build off of that, I mean, I was thinking about motivation, and as somebody who always was on a team in college and high school, that motivation came from, the competitiveness of wanting to stay up with my team or beat teammates during certain workouts or hit certain times. But the motivation from somebody that was a social runner, the motivation's all around them, right? It's the guys around you, the group that you're running with. It it just it just created motivation. Whether you wanted to have motivation or not, it was there. It was present. It was just whether you took advantage of that or not. But as a solo runner, and I've been slowly diving into the solo running world, the trail running world. I mean, where do you get your motivation to do something like that? Is it just a pure love of the game, love of running? Do you love just being outdoors? Love being by yourself? Like, what motivates you to do that every day and do that by yourself and share it with nobody essentially?
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of a few of those. I like being outside as much as I can, but I think that is the first answer I'll give. It's kind of like the destination. Like I'm very excited to like, oh, I want to get to this peak today. And I think there's no better way than to run there. It's kind of like brewing hiking for me, to be honest. But that is enough for me sometimes to like, oh, let's get this run going because I can't wait to get what I have in mind. And when I get to that location, and like when I'm physically there, it just feels like the best thing ever. And then, a lot of those type of runs too. So let's just say it's like I'll go 8 miles up, whatever, to get to a peak. And then the rest of that, it's like a Superman run. You're just like cruising 8 miles back down or something. Like it's just the best feeling in the world. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a level I kind of like to be by myself on a run, I suppose. I think it's just because I didn't have, in high school I had a team, but I didn't have it to the level that like you two talk about, which, is foreign to me to listen to like having like these team, practices, training practices and whatnot. Whereas, it's I think there's like one or two times I actually see another person running out on like a trail, and that's like the coolest thing ever. It's like, whoa, someone else does what I like to do. But very rarely does that happen. And yeah, no, I think there's a level of like it's a very unique thing to be kind of by yourself for a long time. And uh depending where you're at. So a lot of these places I'm at, I'm a good hour away from civilization. And there's something about that that's kind of enticing. It can be dangerous in a way, but I enjoy it. I guess that kind of answers that a little bit, but
Yeah, you answered that perfect, and I think what summarizes that for me is you enjoy the solitude of running, and I think that every runner can really take running to a different level when you enjoy that solitude because even if you're in the middle of downtown, a big city, and you're just running with your headphones in or whatever, there's still a solitude there. And you can really, and even like we talked about, you're running with a team, and sometimes you can still get zoned out and be in your own space mentally. And there's such a solitude that running creates because you can just tune everything else out and you're able to just be by yourself with your thoughts and you're in tune with your body. You're just running mile after mile after mile. I think there's such a powerful thing that solitude brings to runners. And I think that's why people get addicted to it is because in modern society with how busy we are in social media and we're always on our phones, that's like the one time a day that we're separated from our phones and from talking to people and all that. So I think that is such a powerful thing. And so being out on the trail, that just exemplifies that even more. But I think running in general, you're able to just be by yourself at times, and that to me that is so powerful. For me, it's really can be a spiritual thing as well, and just that being by yourself is such a good thing once in a while. So
yeah,
Yeah.
no. I need to get you out on some trails out here this summer because I think you'll maybe you won't like it, but I want you to experience some of these ones.
no, I'm in for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say I think it's so funny how like because running is like I mean, yeah, you're physically doing it, but it's I mean, I think anyone who's run for any amount of time knows that like mentally is mentally you spend more time, in your own head just thinking about what am I doing? Why does everything hurt? What am I still doing here? Like a lot of people have those that stuff when they first start running and or just when the season starts and you didn't do your summer training. And um it's just it's so interesting to see how like to Hunter's point what he was talking about where you can still find solitude wherever you're at when you're running, but to see the range of it in the running world is like one of my favorite things because like I know people that go and they put on headphones and like they'll do it during like a football game and they'll get one of the treadmills with a TV and they'll just plug their headphones into it and they'll just walk and or like slow jog or something, you know, and that's like their solitude. It's just like they just watch the game, but that's like they like to they use it to run, but they also run so that they can do it. And so there's like that level of it, you know, and then there's you know, the guys like you where, you know, the guys and gals like you that like to get out and just be out and away um and then, you know, it seems like most people tend to kind of fall right into that middle ground where they like to get a little bit of both, but I think that's what kind of makes today's episode more fun because we get to see, you know, kind of like I said, rapid fire, just throwing questions at you of like getting to see what that, you know, what that looks like for you, which it sounds like the same overall reasoning as pretty much anyone else has for running is just going out and having control over that of, you know, being able to push yourself and enjoying the process and enjoying the run. But it's just kind of interesting to see how many different sides of it there are and what people you know what people see as their solitude or how they find it in running. So it's just kind of interesting the farther we dive into it too. I kind of thought this was going to be a pretty straightforward episode, but now my head's going crazy. My head's all over the place trying to think about it.
Well, it's funny too, because like I I took like a break from social media, but I at one point I was like posting all these videos and uh pictures of like my runs. And there's this idea that people got of like they'd be like, oh, I was told I'm like, I love your running blog. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but then I realized it's just my Instagram. But they have this idea of like what I'm doing in their mind as like this very intense, like crazy experience to get to this place. Whereas like it's kind of the opposite. Like it's physically, yeah, it's really challenging, but like it's mentally challenging too. But like I'm just in like a place where I'm just enjoying it so much that I don't really even realize. I'm like, oh yeah, this is crazy. On their perspective, it looks like insane, but I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm just going up the mountain at a little bit faster of a pace. And that's, like it's interesting, like kind of what you're getting at, like how the perspective, like what other people think.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. Like, you see someone like you hear like a lot of times like, oh, you're doing a 5K, like you're crazy. Then it's the same thing as like, oh, you're doing a 50K, you're insane. Like it's still the same concept for a lot of people, just different levels, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also lost on a lot of people who have never gotten to the place where you can enjoy a run because you know, it does take some time to get there, especially if you weren't like a runner to start. You know, I, you know, feel super fortunate and super blessed that both my brothers ran and got me into running when I was young enough that now it just seems like a normal thing. And so it's just like not a foreign concept. And even when you're super out of shape and haven't run in a long time, it's just kind of like still feels kind of natural. And so for a lot of people, you know, I think it's really difficult to get into that headspace of just saying like, no, I'm actually enjoying myself the whole time. Like it's not the end. It's not when I get back in the truck and I leave the trailhead. I'm like, whew, that's over. Like I get to enjoy the drive down because I'm not on my feet anymore. It's like kind of you know, it's just kind of a different perspective on it where, um, you know, there is room for enjoyment. It is actually enjoyable while you're running. You can have fun while you're doing it during it. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of funny to see that side of it too. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we've definitely talked quite a bit about the solo side of running. So let's talk a little bit about the social side. So again, we talked a little bit about motivation, but another word that I was thinking of was accountability. And that is super important for running, for athletics, for whatever you want to be good at, right? So accountability again when you're on a team aspect, like when you're in college, those were the people around you. It was your coaches. It was the people you're training with. So that accountability was always there. So I know I just said we were going to talk about social running, but Ray, I got to ask, like, how do you hold yourself accountable when you're trying to hit some of those big goals? I know that you've done quite a few trail races in the last couple of years. I mean, how do you hold yourself accountable when you may have all these goals in your head, but if you didn't write them down or tell them to people, I mean, no one would know the difference if you're, accomplishing your goals. So I mean, you could just dismiss them completely and be like, oh yeah, I'm doing good or whatever. How do you hold yourself accountable and keep pushing every single day?
You know, hmm, just to get better. It was to improve, I think is like the biggest thing. Like I kind of like back to what Trey was just saying, circle back, like there's like I got to this point where I started having fun on a trail run. And that was really, encouraging for me to want to do it more and more and more. And well, I was taking on a circle back. I didn't do races for like years. I just started running on trails. I was like, oh, this is fun. And I just kept doing it. And then one day I decided like I'll sign up for like a trail run because I've never really signed up for a trail run. And just kind of realized like that was motivation enough to be like, oh, I have this one goal, this one race, see where I'm at. And then I learned from that. So like I went back and I just kept doing it. It really wasn't a lot. I didn't take a lot for me to be motivated, I guess. I don't know how to put this in words. I was already at a place where I'm like, this is just totally in pure enjoyment. And it's easy enough for me to get out and do that.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head as well as um, you know, as I kind of transitioned from the college team to, training for different things kind of on my own, one of the biggest things that I've found to increase accountability is signing up for a race early. Like if you have a goal to run a race, sign up the second it opens up because if you don't sign up, you're going to keep pushing it off and then you're not going to do it. Because if you don't have that date circled on the calendar, there's a good chance you're not going to follow through with that. So that's one of the things that I've done to increase accountability because in last year I didn't run the Monterey Marathon because I kept pushing it back, kind of waiting on work to see if my schedule opened up. And, I was like, well, I'll just wait and see how training's going and this and that. And then, I slacked off because I didn't hold myself accountable with that date on the calendar. So do you guys have any other methods you have to stay on track and stay motivated for races and hold yourself accountable?
It's similar. Like if I have a race lined up in my mind, that it usually that's enough. It kind of just what we're getting at. If I don't have a race, I just I kind of have a base that depending on what time of the year that I just learned like this is what feels good and this is where I want to be at. And then I just go off of that. It just kind of depends, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd say, like when you're talking about that team environment and the social environment, and then like, kind of jumped into accountability, and it's like, uh, I've kind of hit that after college. Like I ran like full speed into that brick wall of like, uh, oh, it's not as easy to get up at 6, 5, 6 in the morning, when you're not meeting, 15 of your teammates who are all trying to like keep this common goal in mind and we're pushing each other to do, so when you roll out of your bed and it's just your feet hitting the ground and nobody else is waiting for you out on the front porch to go do the run, it's like, um, I kind of ran into that full steam and just was like, whoa, all right, I got to figure something out because, so yeah, I think that accountability side has been pretty lost on me as far as like finding finding that level of running that's pure enjoyment again. Like Ray was talking about with those trail runs, I know it's there because I still feel a draw to running in general and I still get out and do it, but not, nearly as much as I should or used to or whatever. But as far as like accountability goes, like um, I would say that that's going to be, the next method I'm trying down here is just kind of like uh, there's so many races down here because the weather stays a little bit nicer for a little bit longer. Um, so I've been, yeah, trying to look at some of these ones coming up in the spring here quick, and um, but I know the other one for me that I really liked thinking about too was the three of us last week when we talked about, oh, it'd be really fun if we picked one just kind of in the middle, some random place. I think that would be one that I would really enjoy too. Just looking at that date on the calendar, but also knowing like it's more than just the race. It's about like the social aspect of getting together again and doing this new thing, this new race and stuff. And for me, like it is such a social thing. I really really enjoy the social side. So I'm just trying to more and more find things on that side of it. But it is, yeah, it's so difficult. It's so different at this stage, I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things that made me smile was you said there's nobody waiting on your front porch to come get you out of bed. And I just thought back to college when somebody missed 6 a.m. practice, and we were like, okay, what dorm are they in? Where do they live? We're going. And I mean, we've gotten keys up to people's dorm rooms, woke up the whole entire floor just to get this guy out of bed and say, hey, you have 30 seconds. We're running right now. And they would throw on some shorts, throw on their running shoes, and they would get out of bed. But I mean, that was the way that we held each other accountable because we weren't going to let. For one, it was hilarious to just wake somebody up. It was so funny, and that was worth it. But I mean, we weren't going to let each other not put in that work. So that was that built-in accountability system that we had, and we weren't going to let people fail based on their effort level. So I thought that on the social side was really an interesting fact of that because as Trey mentioned, when you leave that college world, when you're diving into solo running, when you're getting into running in general, there's nobody that's going to hold your hand and wake you up and get you out of bed. So it's a powerful thing to be able to hold yourself accountable. And we talked about that team aspect, working for that common goal. So Trey, talk to me about what is so attractive about social running. Why are there running clubs all the way across the nation? Why do people do those team sports? What's that draw for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that you do that's difficult, and you're pushing yourself to be better, um, it's extremely satisfying when you can do that on your own and compete with yourself and do that. But um, when you have that aspect of it where you get to show up to this race or this running club, I guess we'll say specifically like a running club, you get there and it's like it's kind of like the great equalizer of like the running club that is here just a couple blocks from my house. I see you got the sticker up in the, yeah, up in the background there. They I showed up there and like I start talking to people and it's like the girl behind the counter that's leading the run, that is working at the store. She's got like more FKTs in Colorado over 10,000 feet than like any other female. I'm like, oh, so she's like a professional runner and she's sponsored. And I'm like, holy crap, like, what is this running club? And then like a guy walks in and he's like, oh, hey, man, welcome to the running club. Like, I know you're new. I met you the other day. I was like, oh, sweet, man. Yeah, how's it going? He's like, oh, I'm still deciding if I want to run or not. Like, he'll like show up to running club and he's like, it's 50-50. He just goes there literally just to talk, and he's good friends with the guy that works there. And so it was just kind of the coolest, like, I love that side of it, that you can find a guy that's like, sometimes I run. He's like, sometimes I come here and just kind of hang out. Like, uh, and then you got people there that are sponsored and are doing this, for as a passion and a living. And so I think anything that you can do solo, um, that can be, to that level as far as like clearing your head and being out there and getting that runner's high. When you're surrounded by 10 to 15 people that also have that runner's high, it's like the most positive environment you've ever been in. Like you get done with a run with a group of people and like you guys are like, yeah, we should buy a house. I think we should just buy a house as a whole team and we all just live there together. And then you know what I mean? Like we've had some pretty crazy ideas on runs, and we've just let them we just let our imagination go. Um, and so I've always loved that side of it. I've always loved the not so serious side of running. I've always loved that. And um, I think anytime you can get a community of people that cares that much about a thing that's only positive, only good things can come from that. And so that's for me. That's why I've just always been such a social runner. And obviously, you guys have been out in public with me, and that's why we didn't have Emery on this episode because I knew this question was going to come up, and I don't need anyone talking about how we're late everywhere we go. Because if I'm at the gas station, I'm going to talk to somebody, and then there's that side of it too, where I'll just go and go and go. So, I think yeah, I just think it's only upside in my eyes as far as the social side. But I know you're kind of on the other end now too, where we came from the same place and had a very similar experience in certain years of college. We had extremely similar experience, and obviously being on the same team, but where you're at now and what we talked about the other day, just on the phone, it sounds to me like you're still a social runner, but kind of have a different perspective. So I don't know if you want to kind of elaborate on that or where you're at on that.
Yeah, I was trying to think because we have the solo and the social, like, and I was trying to think of where I fit, and I immediately was like, oh yeah, I'm a social runner, always have been. But then I've been thinking like the last couple of years, like there's a fair amount of running that I've been doing by myself, and so I maybe I'm a hybrid. We'll just call it that. But yeah, it's one of those things, and we'll probably have an episode just on college running and transitioning in and out of that, because there's a lot to unpack there as well. But we talked about, I think in the first episode, about rediscovering yourself, and that's kind of where some of the strike twice name came from. So that was a big thing for me, is that transition is difficult, and that's why like finding self accountability is huge, self discipline. And some of the things that I've done, like I said, I sign up for races. You got to get them on the calendar. The other thing that I do is you have to have some sort of training plan. If you're training for something, that makes it easier. Because I just love running, and that gives me a purpose, is the training plan and putting races on the calendar. Because in college, the training was built for us. We had a schedule. We did it the same time every day. We knew exactly what we were striving for and when. We knew what the guy next to us was striving for. So it was just, it's easy to run in those environments in some ways because it's built for you. A lot of the legwork is done, but when you transition out of that, it's difficult, and just trying to redefine yourself, and like you both mentioned, finding that just pure love of running can be a little bit challenging at times. But my biggest advice is, if if you want to train for something and want to be competitive, semi-competitive, whatever, even if you don't want to do races, find goals and write them down. Write them on your whiteboard, put them on a sticky note, somewhere where you can see it, and just work towards it. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. Ray mentioned it, to have goals, whether they're to compete in a race, run 100 miles, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just have those goals in your head, so you're not just running kind of without a direction. But also sometimes that's beneficial as well. Like we talked about in several episodes about ditching the watch and ditching the paces. I think there's just so many aspects to this. We could probably talk about it all night, but um, the solo runner and the social runner, they're both are interesting in their own ways. But I'm definitely a hybrid runner right now. Like my last two long runs I've done were with somebody, but I've been doing the bulk of my training kind of by myself. But there's always that draw to the social side, and I probably will always have that. But yeah, it's a lot to unpack. So I hope we didn't lose half our audience already. But what else you guys got? Anything?
I
Uh,
think we ran the gamut from my end anyway.
yeah, I don't. I mean, I feel like there's so much that we can still just unpack, but then we'll just be doing like a part two episode pretty much at that point. Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't even know how to end this. I mean, we just kind of ran out of things to say without just diving down more rabbit holes. But Ray, you've done some amazing things solo wise. We talked about a little bit about the college side and that social runner. And I think we're both probably all of us are just antsy to go run right now. Like that's how I feel right now. Like every time we have these conversations, I just want to go run. So if you guys could just like drive up here real quick, we can go for a quick 34-mile trail run with some beef jerky. I mean that would hit the spot right about now.
Oh gosh, I don't even do beef jerky. Yes, I would do a run.
I'll bring my shoes in a couple of weeks when I come up, but um, yeah, no, I think it's before we cut it, I think it's important to say that uh, this is what running does um, for people. Like this is just it's so funny how this all came together, and this is um, whether we have 4 listeners or 400 listeners or four, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's something in the week that I know we all look forward to, because we just get to like dive super deep into our, good friends' perspectives on the thing that we love to do. And we couldn't be more different in some ways and more similar in others. But we started this episode before we clicked that record button. We literally said, like, we all wrote about like 2 bullet points, and we're like, this episode might be like 10 minutes long. Like, we might be here for about 15 minutes and then just cut it. Um, so if this is any indication, if we ever say next week might be a short one, buckle up. Who knows? It could be. We tend to get farther away from, because it kind of opens up your perspective a little bit more. So, um, yeah, I think it's just kind of funny the way that running does this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we might have 4 people that are listening or 400. It doesn't matter. Like this allows us to have these conversations together, and essentially, it's just us talking, and it just happens to be on Spotify and YouTube. Like, I mean, that's all it is for me. If anybody gets anything out of this, great. Like that's our goal is to help people along, help people understand the world of running a little bit better. But ultimately, it's for us, right? It's for us to be able to learn more about each other, learn more about the sport that we love. So hopefully, our audience is getting something out of this. But I really appreciate these conversations that we're able to have, and I mean, I definitely look forward to it every week. And yeah, I think our episodes are going to get longer instead of shorter. So buckle up.
I'm here for it. It's
Absolutely. Well,
So
sweet. Thank you guys for carving out some time, and we get get to hop on and do the Zoom thing. I know we're all in person people, so this is the last resort. But it's still enjoyable. It's still great. But thanks to anybody that does happen to listen. We do. Yeah, I hope you get something good out of it. Or if it's Mike Larios or one of you boys that was on the team, probably remembering that Sunday morning wake up call or Monday morning wake up call about 10 guys kicking down your front door. So it'll be good memories for the listeners too at this point, because that's all we got. So
yeah, absolutely. So that was episode number 7, guys. Appreciate you guys listening. Me and Trey are gonna be in person for one of the next episodes, and Trey and Ray are gonna be in person. So we're gonna be able to switch things up a little bit and at least get a little bit more personable. But stay tuned for what we got coming up next. And this has been the Strike Twice Running podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Peace.